within this credit unit, we're going to be chatting loans, we're going to be chatting credit, we're going to be chatting homes, cars, and some things with student loans too. But we're going to take it in pieces. So credit in the form of like credit cards is where we're going to start with things. So credit cards, it's an interesting thing. I'm going to try and give side notes to make this more interesting as we go. So this credit cards, they use banks' money instead of yours to buy things. Okay, that's the simplest way we can do it. Why do I need a credit card? Because I don't have enough money in my pocket to buy fill in the blank for whatever it is. If I did, I'd just pay with money. But I don't. So this big old building over here with some people in it that wear really nice clothes are going to borrow me some money so I can go buy what I want. Okay? Now, here's how that works for the bank, though. The banks get interest and fees to make their money. Like, they're not just loaning you this money so you can go out and buy whatever it is you want out of the kindness of their heart. They're there because now they're hoping that you can't pay it off by the end of the month or the end of your period, because then you have to start giving them money. Or if you don't pay it all at the end of the month, now they start charging you late fees, and they start charging you interest. And it's this snowball, a bad one, that just keeps growing that. So, again, it's kind of like, I'm going to buy something, but I really don't have money for it. So, most of the time, there's going to be a limit on the amount you can spend with a card. So this is the maximum you can spend with that particular card. So like if your credit limit was $1,000 on a card, the most you can go up to is $1,000, and then it'll reject you. It'll be like, denied, you can't do anymore. Again, the more money you make, the larger a credit card limit you can get. It can get into tens of thousands of dollars that you can get of credit card limit. Most of the time, though, like teenagers, 18-year-olds, just getting into college, most of the time they limit you between $500 and $1,000, just to make sure it doesn't go, too far over the top here. So how do I get the banks angry, is like the way I like to put this. Avoid paying fees and interest on your account. Pay the full amount of what you spent by month's end. Because credit card companies, they're always going to have, you're going to have like monthly statements that you get. We're going to take a look at one here in a little bit. But you always know when do you have to have a payment in to at least avoid fees. But if you can't pay it all off, that's where the interest game is going to start to come in. And we'll chat about that as we go. So without me just running my mouth constantly, this next part can be kind of interesting. What is a good reason? What's something you can think of that's good about having a credit card? Or that you might have been told is good about having a credit card?
If you need something like such as a car issue and you don't have to pay for saving for emergency.
Okay, so that's a very good example. So like, right, emergency spending. I mean, if you have a medical issue maybe, or a car issue, or something like that. Again, emergency spending is not, I need a pizza right now. Okay? Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But emergency spending is absolutely true. What else? Okay. This is one that, again, Hardy will tend to push back on a little bit. So, improved credit scores. Now,
I heard that credit score that you don't need a good.
well, you were listening good when you were listening to your Ramsey-esque things here. So, credit scores. Here's the opposite sides of the fight on this. Credit scores, while it is true that can help you get a lower interest rate on loans, cards, things like that. How do you get the credit score, though? You get the credit score by going into debt and paying a lot of debt off. So I like to call it, as sometimes Dave Ramsey does too, the I Love Debt score. Ooh, look at my I Love Debt score. It's 820, which basically means, just for an example, for you to get a credit score of 800 usually costs somewhere in the area of you being approximately $100,000 in debt at one time or another. So, yeah, I mean, will it save me a little bit of interest? Yes. Will it help make me rich? Probably not. So, but yes, it can give you some options if you go through a bank to get a good interest rate. But Frank was also correct. There are ways and places for you to get loans for houses, cars, things like that, without having to deal with credit scores. We'll get into that at a different time. I could talk about that for probably 10 minutes. So, but that's a very good normal pro we hear about that. Any others? These couple others I'm thinking of might not be things that you would know about necessarily. So, sometimes you're going to have some purchases that actually require that you have one. Now, that gets a little bit tricky too. So, sometimes with reservations, not so much for like a restaurant, but like a hotel, a car, things like that, they want some way that if there's damage done, you know, you go in there, you have a big party in the hotel room and wreck the place, or you're in the car and you're smoking and leave stains and stuff, that they can get money back out of you somehow. So they'll make you have a credit card where they can charge it if there's a problem. And one that I actually can attest to is that there are credit card companies out there that give you product protection. So like if you go out and you buy a TV and you put it on a certain card, they'll extend your warranty or make it better. Or going back to the reservations, sometimes you can get extra insurance, car insurance for free when you're renting cars and not have to pay for extra things. So again, I'm not going to say they're all awful. Not going to do it. But there are some things that are good. But what could be bad? What could go wrong with a credit card? Yeah, so here we kind of talked about it before. It is very easy with a credit card to rack up debt. Quick story here. So, any of you know which one of the fast food chains was the first one to take credit cards? Oh. McDonald's. McDonald's found out. They did a little survey. They started taking credit cards. Because for the longest time you could just use cash. They found out that when people could use a credit card to pay for their bills, they tended to have approximately a 25% higher bill. Why? Because now instead of going, hey, I only got $10, now I'm like, hey, what? Supersize it? Supersize me up. Let's go. Add dessert. You don't care because you don't feel the pain when you just sit there and take this out and swipe it or something, put it back in. You don't think about it. But if you've got to go into your pocket and they're like, that'll be like 15 whatever, and you're like, oh crap, I only got $16 in my pocket. And you have to hand all of it away, that kind of hurts a little bit right here.
I know where your money is.
So you do. So stay away from me. But it's easier to just kind of rack it up that way too. So that would be tricky. We kind of talked about this too. If I can't pay it off, now I'm paying even more money, and I'm getting good stuff for it. I'm just paying interest and fees and all those things. So that can be kind of bad.
I know. You don't want credit cards? You might as well, you have to pay everything off at once if you have an option.
It's helpful. It's helpful if you can pay everything off as you go. I mean, that comes back to the good debt, bad debt thing. I mean, people will say, I went to school, I got a degree, that's good. Now I'm going to go get more schooling. I'm going to keep paying for it with credit on loans and whatever. I just kept paying my way through the whole time. That is something we could get into, too, when we start talking about student loans and stuff. That's one of the options. There are places that either will, like, apprentice and pay for you to go to school while you're doing stuff. The armed services is another way that you can do that, to work on not having to rack up credit and things there too. That's absolutely true. So, I mean, you're like, Hardy, are those the only two you've got? Well, now,
What's that?
interest and fees. If you get a credit card and you're not paying it off, and you keep being late, and you're not making payments, and they're having to call you, and you're like, uh-oh, it can mess up your credit score if you're not paying it off as much as it can improve it when you do. So we got to kind of balance things out a little bit as far as that goes. But so again, we kind of weigh it back and forth. It can be good, it can be bad, but it's interesting that credit scores end up in both categories. Because as we come a little lower, okay, so credit score. And I'm not gonna bore you all with the details of how these are calculated, because there's like 6 different things that go into it, but all of them have to do with going into more debt. How, what's your credit limit? How much do you have available? How much of it do you use? Are you good on making your payments? Things like that. So it's this number which is supposed to tell us how well you manage your credit. And I'm going to put a question mark behind that. Because again, for me to have a higher score, I got to have more debt, which to me is kind of counterintuitive, but it is what it is. So you are sitting at the throne of FICO, sorry, different thing, FICO, when you're doing this. So to come up with your credit score, like I said, I appreciate your patience through this first day as we're kind of getting some things down. So are you making your payments on time? How much have you borrowed? Because again, at the throne of FICO, we like you to owe a bunch of money. How long have you been borrowing money? So it's really hard to have a real high credit score when you're young, because your credit history, the length of it isn't as long as someone who's older and been able to get into debt longer and types of things like that. And the last one, and this is the one that gets interesting. Okay. Hardy confession. Before I became the financial Dave Ramsey type guy, things like that, I was awful about this. I was the exact opposite of what I am now. When I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I would specifically go out opening credit cards to get reward points and bonuses at the start. At my absolute highest, I had 33 credit cards that I was playing and balancing. Now, I never got myself into big trouble with not being able to pay things off, but as you keep switching these around, if I spend $1,000, I get 100,000 flight miles and this and that and this and that. But you end up spending so much money trying to get them that it really doesn't end up helping you out at all. So you want to be careful how many accounts you get going, because that can even cause you a problem. You forget to pay something off, it can be bad.
I heard also that it's a bad habit if you get a credit card from your parents, and so they teach you about life. It creates a bad habit for you. Like if they give you a credit card.
If it's done correctly, and for those of you that might not be able to hear that,
I read that.
parents getting you, if parents get you, let's say, a prepaid debit card where you have a certain amount of money on it, you can kind of learn to spend. But yeah, putting an open credit card in the hand of an 18-year-old is a bad idea.
Isn't there also some way where your parents can also put you onto credit, and then by the time you're 18, you're supposed to work?
You can with credit cards, yes. You can have additional people added on that are of age. I think you have to be 18 before they'll let you. Don't quote me. I've got to double check on that. But yeah, sometimes if the parents are willing to take the risk, because it would be, because if you go out and they've put you onto their card and you go crazy, they're still responsible even if you're the one that did it. So yeah, I've seen that happen with people before too. But it's an interesting fight, because you normally get people on one side or the other, and it never ends up in the middle. So okay, oh boy, why is the credit score important? Okay, deep breath. I'm gonna talk like a normal person would here. Eligibility for lower interest rates. That basically is what you're shooting for. Like right now, if you could go out and you could save 2 or 3% on a mortgage for a house, you're saving tens of thousands of dollars over the life of that mortgage. Cars, same thing. If they're expensive, you're able to bring that back down into a better spot. So that's the biggest thing on the credit score. It helps you with mortgages, car loans, things like that. The one that I will argue till I'm blue in the face is, some people say a credit score is important for you to get a job. Now, I have never gone any place to a job where your credit score being 800 or 500 is going to make them want to hire you. Maybe if you were going into a financial job, I don't know. But I've heard that before, and I'm like, that's just silly. So, we'll see. Okay. Before we hit up account statements, I want to show you something quick. Maybe. If this cooperates with me. Oh, there we go. So, when you get to deal, because we're going to start talking specifically about the credit card now. This is it's not an actual, but it's pretty prototypical of what a credit card statement looks like. Get your name, you've got your account number. Again, dates are important. Okay, that payment due date, you better have some money down on that thing, at least this much, by that date, or you're going to start taking on fees, late fees. Late fees on credit cards can be anywhere from like $25 to $50, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you don't have a lot of money, it is. They'll always let you know what your balance is, how much credit you still have available, if you want to keep spending, even though you owe $1,500 already. And then it'll list off all the places that you have purchased things and how much they are. You need to watch this stuff. Numbers get stolen. It happens. And so all of a sudden, if you look and you're like, wait a minute, County Airline, I've never flown anywhere in my life. You need to call the company and start working with them right away. Normally, if it's nothing you've done, they'll fix it. But you've got to let them know or they don't know anything. And so again, how much do you need to pay? If you're not paying at all, okay, the annual percentage rate will tell you how much over a year. So if that money stayed not paid for the whole year, it cost you almost 20% to borrow that money. And then this is just that number divided by 12, the purchases per month. So that's the interest you're paying per month. You're like 1.65%. That's not bad. And then you can have all your numbers and things like that too. Pay it online, pay it in person, whatever that is. So with that in mind, let me jump back over here. Yeah. Good question. If you don't use a credit card, most companies, if you haven't used it in 12 to 18 months, will send you one more letter to make sure, why haven't you been using it? And then they'll just close the account. And then you could always go out and get another one if you wanted to, but that's normally, that can even mess with a credit score. That's a different question too. Credit scores, you can still gain things if you take out loans for things, like you went and got a loan for a car, or even with your student loan payments, if you get there and you're paying them back regularly. Any place that you are making payments regularly and making them on time will all add to a credit score. And then when we don't, they all take from them. So, okay, what you just saw was an account statement. So this is all of my purchases, payments, and interest for this particular 30-day period. It's rare you're going to see companies that stretch it out to 45, 60. Mostly it's 30. It's that constant circle coming back each month here. So just kind of let you know where you've been, what you've done, when you get that bill and are like, oops, I forgot I did all those things. So the minimum. Here's what gets interesting, okay? That's the smallest amount you can pay to avoid fees. Now, notice, I didn't say to avoid interest. You'll still pay interest if you do the minimum payment. But to keep you from having to pay the $35, $50, whatever it is fee, you've got to make sure you at least pay the minimum. That's why it gets dangerous if you get a really big amount, because the minimum goes up with it. And if it gets to a point that you can't even cover the minimum, now we got an issue. Now we got a problem that we're trying to get out of. So that also leads to this. What happens if you don't pay all the money you owe at the end of the month? You pay interest on the unpaid balance. Now, if it gets to be, maybe it's a week after and you do have the rest of the money at that point, you pay it off immediately. You don't wait for the next bill. You pay it off immediately, and then the interest is less than it would have been if you waited. So you always want to get that out of the way as fast as you can, because every day that you're paying interest, you're losing money. In life, money is going to do one of two things. It's going to go out of your pocket in interest and fees and payments and stuff, or it's going to go into your pocket in the way of investments and interest and stuff like that. So you actually get to make a call on that, whether you believe that or not. It's true. And you can kind of see how that works. Man, we're going to end up doing no work today because I got one last thing to do, and then I'm going to stop, and then we can all go home and take a nap in this weather because it's probably going to be something necessary. So when we get to here, we're going to stop. We went into major discussion mode here today. So again, you're like, wait a minute, didn't we already discuss this? Let's go back to it. Nope. Okay. So the credit card itself just allows us to borrow funds. I mean, I could say it's this little plastic thing with pictures on it, but again, borrow funds from places that have a lot more money than we do. There's a reason for that. And we then pay them back with interest and things like that. The account statement we just got done talking about, so we're not going to write that again. And then the finance charge is extra interest paid for missing a payment. So what we're going to see when we start up tomorrow, because we're going to actually start doing math tomorrow instead of just talking and writing all these things down. When you're trying to find a new balance on an account statement, there's a lot that goes into this. So I'm going to change colors. This is going to be the last thing I write. So whenever we have a new balance, let's find some colors to play with here. So whatever money you didn't pay last month, that's what our previous balance is. Plus, yeah, we don't like seeing pluses on this. Finance charges, that can be interest, that can be late payments. Those are both considered finance charges. Yeah, sure. Plus more money that I've spent, new purchases. You're like, Hardy, you're running out of room. I know, it's the last thing I got to write. Minus, finally we get a minus. Minus how much ever money we paid them back. So how much did I owe them before? How much interest do I owe them on top of it? How much more have I gone into debt that I'm continuing to pay? Then we'll subtract how much you gave us back at the end here, and we'll see how much you still owe us. More than likely. Unfortunately. So as I said, after living through that for the majority of a period, we'll actually do the mathematics tomorrow, and I will try to never put you through anything so wordy ever. Again,